It's Rick Jones of FishBait Solutions, and it's time for episode 4 in season 3. Episode 4, spelled F-O-U-R, is all about for, F-O-R, as in, what are you for today from the bridge? I recently read a terrific book by Jeff Henderson called Know What You're For, a growth strategy for work and even better strategy for life. Jeff is a minister at Gwinnett Church in Atlanta, Georgia, which is a church in the Andy Stanley-led family of churches. But before becoming a minister, Jeff worked for a long time at Chick-fil-A. And you've heard me a lot talk about Chick-fil-A as an example of excellence in a number of ways. The essence of this book is determining what you as a person and what you as an organization actually stand for. He starts with focusing your for on the customer, being for the customer in every way. And he asks the reader to ask 2 questions about their business or organization. Number 1, what do you want to be known for? And number 2, what are you known for? The gap between those answers is what the business needs to start working on. When the answers to these 2 questions are the same, then your customers have become fans. And these fans are your best marketing vehicle because they tell others about you. Your customers become your marketing team. You have to realize that word of mouth is still the greatest form of marketing that there is. For all my marketing majors out there, we all remember the 4 P's of marketing: product, price, place, promotion. Jeff says that all 4 of these have been trumped and replaced by another P word, and that word is purpose. Jeff quotes one of the great advertising executives, Joey Ryman, with Joey's definition of purpose. Joey Ryman says, purpose is where your company's distinctive gifts intersect with the needs of the world. Wow. If you identify the needs and bring solutions to these needs in your own distinctive way, then your organization will soar. The problem is not that companies don't identify their purpose, but rather they do identify and then do nothing to prove it. Yes, yet another P word, prove. This week, think about your organization, your business, or your team, and ask yourself, and then all members of your team, these 2 questions. Do we know our purpose, and do we deliver on that purpose? Next week, we'll continue our discussion on Jeff's book with a look at being for the team. That's your team. Speaking of identifying and understanding purpose, my very special guest today is my pal, Jim Rink from Nashville, Tennessee. Jim is one of the most talented and creative people I know, and he's here today to both tell you a little about his amazing career and talk about his latest passion pursuit to help people find out their own passion and what they want to be for. Jim has had a very successful career in entertainment, but has now turned his attention to helping people find their purpose with his company, Purpose of You. Let's welcome Jim to the bridge. Hey, Jim, glad you're with us today.
Rick, thrilled to be here with you and your audience. This is exciting. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for the opportunity.
You betcha. Let's go back, way back, and start at the beginning. Where'd you actually grow up?
I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. In the 70s, I was man, I tell you, sports in Pittsburgh were, man, that was the year of Terry Bradshaw and the Steelers and Willie Stargell and the Pirates and the Penguins. I mean, it was just a sports team, and I grew up with a love of sports and entertainment in Pittsburgh.
Well, Pittsburgh is one of my favorite cities. I mean, you talk about a city that has had a renaissance too. I mean, there's just excitement and energy and restaurants and all sorts of things as they've pretty much restored a lot of the old steel mills and created kind of a mini tech hub and all that kind of stuff. So I'm a big fan of Pittsburgh. And then who was the classic African American Austin Wilson? August Wilson. August Wilson is a playwright that has done all kinds of wonderful stories about the African American community in Pittsburgh over the years that are really, really interesting pieces of work. But then you go to Oral Roberts. That had to be culture shock.
It was a huge culture shock. Number one, it's in Tulsa, which was completely foreign than the melting pot of cultures that I grew up with in Pittsburgh. And it was different because it was my first time really being in, more of a Christian school, which is a different culture change. But I tell you, the reason that I went there, I fell in love with television in high school through a public television, high school having a television program. And that's where I first fell in love with producing and working on television projects. And I knew I wanted to study television and film. And ORU actually had the best television schools in America. Film, New York, or LA. But boy, I tell you, for television production, they just had a first-of-class program. And they were also a broadcast facility. And I knew that if you were a good student, you got to work in the broadcast facility. And that's really why I went there, was for the internship and the hands-on practical experience in television and learning how to become a television producer.
It's interesting. We're going to talk a lot this morning about purpose. And I think it's kind of unusual for someone as young as you were at the time coming out of high school to absolutely know what you wanted to do and where to go get it.
Yeah, I didn't realize how fortunate I was at the time. But I will tell you this, Rick, because you bring up the purpose side of it. I started having a longing for purpose when I was 14 years old. And it really came down to a really pivotal moment in my life where I had an older brother who had special needs. He had Duchenne muscular dystrophy.
Yep.
And he was dying when I was 15 years old. He was 14. And right before I turned 15, he actually died. And if you know anything about Duchenne muscular dystrophy, it's hereditary. And for some reason, I should statistically have the disease, and I don't. So I knew at a very young age that my life, I was alive for a reason, and I was on a quest in a mindset to figure out, okay, why? What's the purpose of all of this?
Well, one of our charities at FishBait is Duchenne's. We run a big program with the American Football Coaches Association called Coach to Cure MD. And it's all about Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. It's the number one genetic killer of boys, only affects boys, no cure. Yep. And our coaches every year in September, the last Saturday of September, make that Coach to Cure MD Day, and they wear patches on the sidelines and do a lot of stuff. But I didn't know you had a Duchenne's brother. That's that is at that age to watch your brother pass. You don't have the disease. You wonder, why don't I have it? He has it, and then the challenge of okay, what am I supposed to do with my life?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
life got real when at the passing of my brother.
Yeah.
When I was 14, and then right as I turned 15, and trying to really sort through all of that.
Well, you go to Oral Roberts. What was your first job out of college?
Well, actually, I worked my way through the ORU Broadcast Center. So by the time I graduated with my degree, I had already had 4 years of hands-on experience working in a broadcast center. And I started out in working college, really doing any and all grunt work, pulling cable, wrapping cable, getting coffee, all the typical stuff. And I'd worked my way up into as a segment producer, as well as an assistant director within that broadcast center. So once I got a job, my eyes were firmly fixed on California and moving to Southern California and really trying to build a career in television, in film in Southern California.
So you moved to Southern California.
I did,
And then what happens?
I ended up working at a production studio, and one of my mentors when I was in college, a gentleman by the name of Phil Cook, who was the television director, he had actually started a business, and I watched Phil build a television production company on his own as a side hustle, as a side job, but it really put the entrepreneurial bug in me. And by the time I was 27, I decided I really wanted to work for myself. So a little bit before that, 25, I started my first company, and then I pivoted at age 27 and really became an entrepreneur and started working for myself as an independent television producer in Southern California.
Well, talk about some of the projects that you did during that period.
Actually, at that period, I was doing a lot of direct response television, or doing some, documentary was kind of, and storytelling was really kind of what I cut my teeth on and really got good at. So I was doing a lot of international documentary work, traveling a lot, and then just having a variety of different companies that were just my clients. Now, I would say at that point in time in my life, I was searching for purpose because I was realizing I was doing projects that were a little small, and I really felt an interest to do something on a much bigger platform, which pushed me over to doing some postgraduate work at UCLA. And I had some really great professors there that really encouraged me to pick an entertainment city to live in. And at the time, I was living in San Diego, so I was looking at New York, Los Angeles. And then, oddly enough, I started moving to Nashville, or traveling to Nashville for some of my clients. And Nashville just seemed to be a great place to build my business. So in 94, I moved from San Diego to Nashville and really made Nashville my home for the future business projects that I was doing.
Well, you've done a lot of work in the entertainment space. I know you did some work with, I think, Dick Clark Productions and some others. Talk a little bit about some of the entertainment projects you've done.
Right. Well, oddly enough, it was, I was 30 years old when I moved to Nashville, and I quickly started to diving into more about purpose and purpose-based leadership. And I studied a couple of really good books. And then that's really when I wrote my Purpose of You curriculum. But when I wrote it, I immediately took it to my television projects. And that's when I went from doing projects that were tens of thousands of dollars into the millions of dollars. And that was really the pivotal change. So the very first project that I created with a gentleman by the name of Robert Deaton, who is now the executive producer of all CMA properties. He had brought me in to launch the CMA Music Festival. The very first year we did it for CBS, and then it pivoted and moved over to ABC, which built the entire relationship between the CMA and the Country Music Association and ABC. So I helped launched and produced for 10 years the CMA Music Festival, the first year for CBS, and then the following years with ABC. That also got me introduced to a young 15-year-old girl at the time by the name of Taylor Swift that I cast for a project for a cable channel, GAC, and I cast her for a series that I was launching called Shortcuts. And did that. And also we did a secondary project with her for her first television special called A Place in This World, which then led me also into producing shows for Lifetime and creating the Army Wives Gives Back franchise for Lifetime. So it all really comes down to entertainment properties that are all a little bit that are really focused in purpose.
Well, it's interesting though. I think things happen sequentially. I talk a lot to young people about identifying their gifts and then growing their gifts, but you have to learn your craft. I mean, you didn't go from, I'm getting out of college and I'm going to go do multi-million-dollar things. You had to kind of do it one building block at a time as you got good at storytelling, at producing, at putting things together, and then I think that leads you to bigger things. But I think I always tell people, don't get ahead of your skis. First things first. And the first thing is get really good at your craft.
Yeah. And especially in entertainment. Entertainment is an industry that is built around excellence. You have to be great. One of my mentors that I mentioned earlier, Robert Deaton, he gave me a very clear directive as the executive producer that I was working for the CMA, is you have to do something so great they cannot deny you. And that is so true. You have to do everything great with greatness and excellence. Good has to be your enemy.
Yeah, and that's hard because I think it gets harder as you get older. We all get comfortable then. We get a little fat and happy, and we start thinking that good enough is good enough. And then you realize, it's not, and there's always going to be somebody younger, better, hungrier that's going to take your spot unless you have this attitude of greatness every day.
Yeah, that's true.
You did a really fun project. Again, I'm a son of the 70s, and I grew up as just this enormous Doobie Brothers fan. I mean, they were just, they were my band. I mean, I just loved the Doobies. And later on, you kind of put what I call the band back together with an amazing, album and special where they, married themselves with some of the leading country music artists. Talk a little bit about that project, because that was tremendous.
Yeah, the Doobie Brothers Southbound project, I got brought in by the record producer, David Huff. They knew that they needed a television vehicle and television properties, which they brought me in to help create. And what I loved it, because I tell you, the Doobie Brothers were extremely influential to me. And also, like, the minute by minute record that of the Doobie Brothers was really powerful because, as I mentioned earlier, when I was 14, 15 years old, that's when my brother was dying. And that record was the last record that my brother and I shared together. So it was the soundtrack to watching my brother die, to just going through the mourning process and trying to really figure out purpose and meaning in life. So to sit down with Michael McDonald and Patrick Simmons and Tom Johnson and tell them, look, I'm passionate about telling this story and working with you guys because your music has touched me greatly. And talk about guys, those three gentlemen that were all real pivotal members of the Doobie Brothers, they all have a work ethic of excellence and greatness. I mean, watching Michael McDonald record his vocals, of how he sings and how he performs, and his meticulous attention to details, I've never seen a work ethic like Michael McDonald in the recording studio. It's mind-boggling.
Another one of our charitable clients is the V Foundation for Cancer Research, and there's a really funny story. Every year we run this thing called the Jimmy V Classic in Madison Square Garden, and December, and in October we would do a special event where we would bring in the four coaches that were going to play in the Jimmy V Classic, and we would do a live and silent auction. And one of the live auction items every year is this trip out to Napa, California for the Jimmy V Wine Festival. And the woman at the time, Joyce Aschenbrenner, who ran the V Foundation fundraising, she came to me and said, I can't give this away. I need you to bid it really high. And then don't worry about it. I'll give you your money back. I can't give it away for nothing. And I said, sure. So I bid, and she came by afterwards and said, thanks, Rick, no problem. I said, no, I'm going to go. I'm going to write you a check. I'm going to go. And she goes, no, you don't have to do that. I said, no, Charlotte and I, we're going to go. And that year we went. Amazing event, and the culminating event was at Francis Ford Coppola's winery, and Michael McDonald was the guest entertainer. Unfreaking believable. I mean, I still get cold chills thinking about how good that guy is. I mean, what a musician. Yeah.
And I tell you, he is salt of the earth. He is the sweetest, kindest gentleman you could ever think or imagine. He truly, truly is just a wonderful soul.
Well, you're a guy that, I'm not going to say finally, because it was a journey, but you figured out your purpose, and now you've decided, hey, I'm going to try to help others figure out their purpose. And that's very, very exciting. Why now and why purpose?
Yeah, good question. The truth is, in my quest for purpose, I was really able to define it in my 30s. Shortly after I moved to Nashville, I had read a great business book called Built to Last, but it's an analytic book, and it's great for business leaders talking about visionary businesses, and the visionary businesses all have purpose, values, and goals to go live their purpose. But what I realized was there wasn't a curriculum to help entrepreneurs like myself figure out how do you write a purpose statement? How do you write a values declaration, let alone goals to go live it? So I ended up thinking, well, why don't I just make a fictional documentary? And I thought I will play in this documentary that I'm going to do an interview with Walt Disney to help figure out how he wrote the purpose statement of Disney is to make people happy. Short, simple, declarative. To make people happy. That's Disney's purpose statement. So anytime you do a documentary, your questions are always what is going to lead the person to giving you the narrative that you need to build your story. Well, once I wrote all the questions, I thought, well, I can answer these questions myself. And once I realized that, then I realized, I also have a program where I can go help other people. So the purpose statement that I wrote is my purpose is to communicate hope, to help people, to make people happy. And I realized, I can put this to work in my business for my television projects. And it worked great. And that's when I saw significant growth going from tens of thousands of dollars to multi-million-dollar projects. But then I immediately started teaching it kind of as a side hustle, just helping friends, family members. I teach it at my church because basically I then wrote a curriculum where it's 8 steps to help you figuring out and defining your own purpose. And these are very similar purpose business strategies that John Nordstrom did when he built Nordstrom, or what Walt and Roy Disney did when they built Disney, or what Steve Jobs did when he built Apple. It's you always have to have a purpose, a reason for existence beyond profitability. And so when I turned 50, this is a couple of years ago, I realized the entertainment industry has shifted and changed. It's not exactly what it was when I started my career. And I was in this place in my life that I thought, okay, what do I really want to do for significance? And I thought, you know what? I really want to focus more time and attention on helping others, other entrepreneurs, other future business leaders, other dreamers figure out their purpose and really build a purpose strategy for individuals to help guide and lead their life so that they can go create new and better things.
Well, what a legacy that will be, the ability to pass on what you've learned about developing your purpose to others that are going to then find their purpose, and then they're going to in turn help other people find their purpose. It's a continuum.
It is. And, the truth is, one of the things that, I learned as I read Built to Last is you realize all of these businesses, visionary businesses like Sony and Walmart and Nordstrom and Disney, across all spectrums of business, their purpose statements always had, as I went and looked through it and basically reverse engineered their purpose statements, they all have core feelings plus actions and people they want to go influence for a greater good. Feelings plus actions plus people equal purpose. So when I work with entrepreneurs or college students today, what I'm helping them do is figure out what feelings touch them that they're wanting to go give to other people, the actions and things that they love to go do, and who do they really want to go influence for a greater good, the people they really want to touch. And you build those simple little framework, you can build the puzzle piece so that in a couple easy steps, they're figuring out, oh, this is my purpose. This is really what I want to go do. And you can build businesses around that. It's great for college athletes. It's great for entertainers because it's great for influencers because we all need some kind of brand identification that we're going to be great at. And you're going to be great at your purpose because it's really what you've been built to do.
You know, I talked earlier on the podcast today about the fact that identifying your purpose is just the start. You actually got to prove it. You know, you've got to live that purpose. And I love that middle part you said, which was the action part. You know, you got to do it. You know, the purpose statement is not something that you write and stick on the shelf and say, well, I got that done, let me move on with it. It really defines the roadmap for what you're going to do with your life and what you're going to do with your business.
Yeah, and that's that really becomes the goal part of it. I mean, if you can have big goals, then it becomes a lifestyle. You're always living your purpose, but you have to train your mind to think differently about your purpose. It doesn't have to be some mystical. It needs to actually be very simple, and it doesn't need to be just aimless. It needs to be a strategy. And the more you have that purpose strategy, it becomes a lifestyle and it's a business strategy. You end up becoming, as Bill Talas would show you, for businesses that have purpose, values, and goals, they become 6 times more profitable than their competitors. Competitors just chase profits, but a purpose-based company chases purpose, and it actually makes them 6 times more profitable.
Yeah, I've just finished reading an amazing book by Steve Robinson, who was the chief marketing officer for 35 years at Chick-fil-A, and it's called Covert Cows and Chick-fil-A. And basically,
I love that.
And basically, it is a story about Truett Cathy's purpose and how he took his purpose and took a boneless chicken sandwich.
Yep.
And you know, their same store comps are 5 times higher than anybody else's. They're more profitable than any other fast food restaurant, and they're only open 6 days a week and not 7. And it's all driven by their purpose. I mean, it really emanates about purpose.
Yeah. Chick-fil-A has an enormous purpose, and it's deeply embedded into the culture and fabric of the company.
Yeah, I mean, it was an incredible book about how they stayed true to their purpose throughout everything. I think your timing is perfect right now, too, because I think coming out of COVID-19, there were a whole lot of corporate people or a whole lot of people that said, you know what, I'm not sure I want to do that again. I found out that I was just a number. Maybe I didn't matter. I'm seeking my own personal purpose, and I think you're going to see over the next 1 to 2 to 3 years, more entrepreneurial startups, maybe than ever before in the history of our country. And you're in a great position to say to those entrepreneurs, let me be your guide. And I think that's very exciting.
Yeah, well, what we've realized in a lot of the data that we've kind of collected is, number one, Gen Z and millennials care more about purpose than they do a paycheck. They care about purpose. And one of the data that, like, the entrepreneurial generations of just Gen Z individuals, they're saying 72% of them want to start a business because they believe it'll fix some of the world's problems, which is a great, great passion. What I'm trying to do is help those individuals figure out why.
Well, thank God for that, because we're in an era that one of two things is going to happen. We're either going to completely look to the government to solve everything, and I go back to the great Ronald Reagan quote where he said, "The scariest thing in the world, the scariest statement in the world is, 'Hi, I'm with the federal government and I'm here to help you.'"
Yeah.
So but I am a big believer that capitalism without compassion, and with my faith, I even say capitalism without Christ is a sin. It's a sin, and entrepreneurs that want to build businesses to help society, to help solve problems, to find ways to create opportunities, that's the future, and that's exciting.
It is exciting. And I think, one of the challenges or opportunities, depending on how you look at it, for Gen Z as well as millennials and anybody that's still in their 40s and early 50s, is that in the next 10 years, by 2030, Dell Technology is predicting that 85% of the jobs that people will be doing in 2030 haven't been invented yet. So we are in a season of ongoing change. And the majority of that is because of the rapid advancement of artificial intelligence. So you have to build businesses that are ready to change and that can pivot. And if you have purpose, then you have a true north. You can adapt and you stay on track.
Yeah, it was interesting in this Chick-fil-A book. True Cathy owned a little tiny diner called the Dwarf House in Atlanta, in Hapeville, actually, between Atlanta, Hartsfield, Jackson Airport, and the Ford factory. And he ran it for 27 years before he started Chick-fil-A. And he started Chick-fil-A in shopping malls. And he grew as shopping malls grew. Well, then shopping malls quit growing. And then you have to pivot and you have to become standalones. And then when you become a standalone and you own your own business, when you were a mall-based business, you didn't have breakfast because the mall didn't open until 10 o'clock and nobody was going to eat breakfast. And now you have to have breakfast. And he was able to pivot a lot, but the purpose never changed.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. Purpose can be a huge business strategy just to help you advance, create new opportunities, and to continually pivot.
Well, I want to kind of switch gears with our final little segment here. We had a couple of weeks ago, we had TJ Nelligan on, who's a dear friend who had a special needs child. And he wrote a great book called Live Like Sean, Lessons I Learned from My Special Needs Child. I know you have a special needs child. Talk a little bit about how that kind of changes your perspective or how it, changes just kind of the way you live your life.
Yeah, James the Great. He is the dude of all dudes, man. James is now 15. He has autism and Down syndrome. So he is, man, I tell you, I tell everybody my job, I've got a lot of great jobs, a lot of great gigs, but being James's father is by far my favorite gig. My mission in being his father is to raise James to be a man of greatness and excellence. Special needs is special needs. He can be great and excellent just being who he is. And I tell you, the thing that I probably learned the most from James is his nickname is James the Great. Everybody that loves him, knows him, calls him James the Great. But I gave him that nickname on the day he was born for a reason. And you mentioned faith and what it really taught me. The one thing that James is always teaching me is the teaching of my faith, which is I'm a follower of Jesus. And Jesus says that the greatest in the kingdom of heaven are children. James will always be childlike. He says children are the greatest in this kingdom of heaven because they always have to trust other people. James will always have to trust other people because of his mental disability. He is great purely because of the way he was born. And he's a constant reminder to me to always trust God and the people that are always there to help me. And as I help James be a man of greatness and excellence at whatever he chooses to do in life, he is a man of greatness and excellence and just specialness because of how he was born and his disability. And the good thing is I grew up a brother of a special needs child.
Correct. Yeah.
And that really helped prepare me for being James's father.
Well, I also think it gives you great context when people find their purpose and then turn to you and say, this is really hard. And you go, yeah, it is hard. You're gonna overcome obstacles. You're given certain gifts. In some cases, you're given maybe certain limitations, but you can be the best you.
Yeah. Well, the great thing about purpose is, and this is something that I learned from Walt and Roy Disney and looking at how they managed Disney in the Great Depression, is purpose helped transcend the chaos of the Great Depression for the Disney brothers. I mean, they were on the verge of bankruptcy, and then Walt created The Adventures of Mickey Mouse. And then they took all the profits of that and they created Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which was $8 million of revenue in, I think, 1937 and 38, which is like $146 million today. Purpose will help you transcend chaos. And I tell you, you get the diagnosis that your child has a mental disability or special needs, purpose helps transcend it, because you begin to have a perspective of saying, okay, there's greatness in this. What do you want me to learn from this so that I can bring my purpose to help raise James? And I certainly see that. My purpose is to communicate hope, to help people, to make people happy. So my purpose is to communicate hope to James, to help James, to make James happy.
Well, that's a great place to leave our conversation today. Tell everybody out there how they can reach you, because I think there are a lot of people listening that are going to go, I want to find out a little bit more about this purpose thing.
Yeah, purposeofyou.com is the website. You can reach me on the Start Now button. It sends me an email, or you can follow me on social media at James M. Rink, R-I-N-K, James M. Rink. Purposeofyou.com and James M. Rink. James M. Rink.
Well, I'm excited about where you're going and some things that I think we're hopefully going to be able to do together. And I can't thank you enough for being with us today from the bridge.
Thank you, brother.
Here's today's view from the soapbox. How well do you tip? How well do you tip waiters or valet drivers or bellmen or bartenders? Lately, all I see are help wanted signs everywhere. There are literally millions of jobs out there. Unfortunately, a lot of people have decided it's better to take the taxpayers' money and not work. But instead of a rant about these people, I want to salute the people that are doing the often thankless task, like parking our cars, carrying our bags, and serving food to us. Here's 2 suggestions. Number 1, thank them. Look them in the eye and sincerely thank them for working for you. Then number 2, over-tip them. I use a Capital One Venture card, and I absolutely love it when they check in with me and ask, did I really mean to tip that amount? Yes, I did. I cannot do anything about the minimum wage. We'll save that for another soapbox day. What I can do is show them my appreciation by putting my money where my mouth is. Speaking of waiters and waitresses, here's a great place without any of them. I love the old meat and 3 joints across the country. Maybe the best of the best is Arnold's Country Kitchen in Nashville, Tennessee. Started in 1983 by Jack and Rose Arnold, the place is now run by their children. It's the classic Southern buffet. You grab a tray and walk down the buffet line and pick from a half dozen meats as your entree. Then you pick from literally dozens of vegetables, grab a biscuit or a cornbread muffin, and a glass of sweet tea. It's the classic meat and 3. But since our theme today is for, F-O-U-R, let's grab a slice of one of those homemade pies and then go home and take a food coma nap. It's Arnold's Country Kitchen on 8th Avenue South in Music City on the road with Rick. That's a wrap for today. Just thinking about all that food made me both hungry and sleepy at the same time. We hope you'll be back with us next week from the bridge.